What's up, YouTube? It's Adam Grover from Grover Boys Racing. Last video I put out was probably like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I guess now. It's been a while. I apologize. We actually took in a cat, and I've been kind of busy trying to get her to get used to things. We think she was dumped out here, and I brought her in. So, new family member, and I've been trying to take care of that before anything else. But tonight I had a little extra time. I was out here, I had a side job kind of work on. But I'm going to give you guys an update of what's done to the car. And I want to talk about intake choice. So stay tuned for the update. That's going to be at the end of the video. But intake choices. I see a lot of guys, first thing they want is some big, fancy, tall, huge intake because it's pretty. Something like this. Like that. That thing's big. Can look down in it. Oh, I can see you guys. Look at that, huh? Pretty, right? Pretty intake. You see it, it's in your face. Open the hood, you know. Boom, right there. Nothing but carburetor and intake manifold. Looks cool. And for something that needs it, that's a great intake for something that turns 8,000, 8,500, 9,000, whatever the case may be. But a lot of guys, that's what they want. They'll have a regular, say, for instance, a factory 302 with a GT40 setup, or even aluminum heads on it with like a 510 or 20 lift cam, trick flow, even a stage 2 trick flow. We'll say stage 2 trick flow with a set of 11R heads, and they want an intake like that on top of it, on a stock bottom end 302. That's not the ideal intake. It'll probably run pretty quick. I mean, I've used that intake. I've been pretty quick with that intake, actually, with a similar setup. Anderson M51, a pair of 170 heads, that intake. And I mean, I went low 11s on motor with it. It's almost into 10s. But, who's to say it wouldn't have went 10s if I had a better intake? Intake's really too big. But I mean, it went 1130s. I went 118. That's why I went at the track. And then I was actually on valve spring float through the traps with it. So I might have went 120 something. Probably would have went 10s with the valve springs fixed, turning it up higher. Engine heads, I used cheap rockers, dropped the valve, and it took the engine out, unfortunately. Driving torque, of all things. Not racing it. Coming out of the circle, getting up to speed, not beating on it. Ooh, bing. And that was it. Made me back home with a hole in the side of the block. Put the piston right out through the side of the block and everything. Bad time. But I never got to see what it would have went. But a lot of people, they want that intake, and it's a lot. It's a big intake. That's my point. Now, I also tried this in the green car, this intake with the E7 heads that are ported. And I can tell you right now, it did not like it one bit. The stick, that's not the intake. That thing was like the complete opposite. From how it worked on the other car to the stick shift setup, you would think the stick shift setup would have been better, but I tried leaving at like 3,500 with that thing, and the car almost shut off. It stalled so bad. And that's with 430 gears. So the car had more gear, granted it was stick, but that intake, E7 heads, which really the smaller head, possibly make more torque, because they are ported. I mean, my heads make as much as what a trick flow 170 runner head makes. It makes over 300 wheel horse, 320. So, I mean, it makes power. It's not like it doesn't have power. But this is a more ideal intake for a street car. Something you want to cruise, drive around, because that's another thing with that intake, wasn't very driver friendly. You know, need the R's up. But this one here, I could put the thing in fourth gear and from 500, I kid you not, 500 RPM with the Anderson cam and the E7s with this intake. So for those of you that know, this was the intake obviously on my car, and you guys know how fast it went. For anybody new watching, how fast you think this intake goes? If you saw this on your average car, how fast would you say the car is? 14s, 13s? Because I can tell you right now, if you don't know what my car has done personally, and don't go back looking at videos, pausing this video, and then comment, oh, went this. You would say that this is a 12 second maybe intake. But I can tell you that this intake has gone 11s, 10s, and 9s. It's a single digit intake right here in the quarter mile at over 130 mile an hour. This Action Plus 8011 weighing this intake. Now you can see, probably see the marks in it. It's not factory. It's not out of the box. For those of you that say, well, I want an out of the box intake, then you don't want to be fast. Or you don't want something that runs decent for what it is. Because I'm going to tell you right now, the way these intakes are made, especially now, I'll put it to you like this. The Chinese intakes are almost better than Edelbrock. And it's certainly better than this. My Chinese intake that's on my car right now, the runners are at least pretty much straight in it. This actually required a lot of runner work. And I'm not saying it's a lot as far as like a lot of work. I'm saying that was my intake runner. I don't know if you can see how crooked that is. But where my finger is, that's what my intake runner looked like on this. I had to straighten this out. And it wasn't far in. It wasn't all the way up in there. It was just straightening it out and contouring it back into the wall back in there. And I mean, we did go in this. I did this intake when I was 19. And my dad kind of went behind my back and did some more stuff to it, apparently, that I didn't know about until a couple of years ago. But, I mean, this thing isn't really crazy done. This is, I did this not knowing anything. Common sense. Looking at it and saying, oh, that ain't right. That needs to be straightened out. And I think I did it with sandpaper and my fingers at the time. I might have used my dad's drill. I can't remember. I don't know if we had the stuff we have now. But the plenum, I did my own thing with the plenum on this. I did it my own way. Took some tricks that I read, and you know, they say cut a notch in the divider and stuff. I didn't cut no notch in it. You can see it's not notched. I did do stuff to it. Can't give away all my tricks. You might say, well, it ain't that big of a deal. It's just whatever you did. It's just a divider, but that little tenth might matter one day when I have the wrong person that watches me and thinks they're better than me. Sometimes you get guys like that. I've seen it before. They ask you for information, and they go out there, copy everything you got, and go out there and think they're King Tut because they're running X time, not realizing that you've been faster, and then they try to race you and think they got something on you. But this intake has been single digits. I mean, I paid $50 for this intake. You can still find them. This intake is hard to beat. This is one of my favorite intakes. And it's not a bias statement, because I've ran air gaps. I ran the Parker funnel web, which this is a knockoff one, but we did work and stuff to it. These intakes, they need work. Be prepared. No matter what intake you get, look at it. If you see something that you think should be cut back a little bit, taking a fingernail thickness of something out, sure, it might break you, but most likely if it's in the way, that's going to help you out. Air don't like to turn around stuff. I mean, if you can get that where it goes through the intake nice, this is an intake manifold we're talking about. So you don't want it huge, but you want it to work. So if you got stuff in the way, get rid of it. I'm not saying go whole crazy, but I'm saying touch it up. Make it where it will work, where it can do its job at least. I had a guy here, customer of mine, friend of mine, and he wanted to put a Team G intake on a setup that he has, and I told him no. So that's going to kill it. I said, what you have here, too much. And I had to give him the rundown on this. That's why I'm making this video, because people don't understand. They don't know. Intakes work in an operating range. This intake, for instance, is off idle to 6,000. This is actually Wien's factory replacement intake for an 85 Mustang. That's all this is. This isn't nothing crazy. I mean, like I told you, I got this intake for 50 bucks. Now they're a little bit more pricey because they don't make them. You know, it's a vintage intake. But find them for like 100, 150. Some people ask 200. So if you wanted an intake like this, you got to search Marketplace or eBay and, you know, talk to people, make offers and deals and things like that. I've ran this intake on a couple different setups. All pretty, I mean, I go back to this intake almost every time. Like I said, I had the air gap on something, didn't like it. I had the Parker funnel web on something, didn't like it. We had a stealth on a buddy's car, didn't like it. This thing would outrun the stealth, which I actually thought the stealth would work better. Because a little bit more uprange. And honestly, I was disappointed. But most likely stealth is out of the box. The air gap was modified. This Parker was modified. And I'm not saying they're hogged out and crazy, but they're done up where they should work better than this. And this intake, just every time, it just works. There's only one other intake that I can truly say might be better, and that's the accelerator. I like that intake a lot. That's another one of my favorites. The accelerator and this Wien are my top two. And I like the Torker 180. I've seen where they work good. The 289 Torker, whatever, with the twisted top. Not that junk low-rise Torker that is straight. There's a guy on here. He said he had the Torker intake, and he goes, we're going to try it. And I told him he'd slow down. I didn't realize he had the Torker 180. And after I saw the intake, I was like, well, of course it's going to run good now. I didn't put two and two together that he had the old style twisted top Torker. Those intakes work pretty decent, especially if you do some work to them. Personally, I never used one, but I've seen some good running stuff, and that gentleman ran well with it as well. But I always go back to this. This is my baby right here, is this little Wien Action Plus. And it always will be. This is going to be, I sold this intake once. I bought it back for 50 bucks again. And never again will I get rid of this intake. People look at this and they go, you want that thing? Yes. If I had the money every time one of these popped up cheap, I'd probably buy it. That and the accelerator. They're two intakes that I would love to stock up and have them just hoarded. Because I'll use them. That accelerator, I'd use that. That thing's good from like 1,800 to 7,000 RPM. This Parker's good from like 35 to 85, if I remember correctly, or 3,000 to 8, somewhere around there. So that's a very big RPM difference. You need an engine behind that. It's not just the RPM, because my motor goes to 8,000 with this little intake on it. It won't make power, but I can spin it to 8. I've done it a couple times. I actually ran this to 7, shifted the car at 7,000 RPM with this intake on it. So this little off idle to 6,000. If the combination's there, this intake will do more than that. I'd be willing to bet that this intake would run with almost any intake out there on a pretty mild setup, something around 550, 600 lift. You know, aluminum heads, maybe something around 10 to 1. This intake would probably be right behind some of your best intakes that you could put on one of those combinations, as crazy as that might sound. And if somebody has an engine that's willing to make an intake change on an engine dyno, I'd be willing to bring this over if they're local to New Jersey and try it. But I'm keeping my intake. I want it back. But I don't think the power loss would be as crucial as people think. So now I got the blower set up. So obviously can't really use this intake manifold, unfortunately. But this is one of those things that people would see my engine and they would just, at the track, you know, you're out, and they just look at it like, what? Especially if they knew what they were looking at. They just look at this thing. They watch the car make a pass. Because usually it was after I made a pass, people would start walking up to the car. Car's sitting there ratty, you know, it's got black doors, black fenders, black nose, black hood, and the rest of the car's emerald green. And they just walk up and shake their head, staring at it. Some guys would ask questions. Are those E7s? You know, some of the guys that knew, yeah. That thing runs like that? Yeah. People probably thought it was like a race car that I shoved a stock motor in, not realizing that I had a goal, you know, to go 9s. That was my goal. I wanted to go 9s with E7s. And now we're trying to go faster. So this goes for GM guys as well, though. This intake stuff, it's not just Ford. This is anything. You need the intake to match your combination. It's just how it is. There's no other way to put it. That's it, point blank. It needs to match the combination. All that stuff has to go together. RPM band, the cam. I mean, if you have an intake already and you want to build the engine to the intake manifold, then you're stuck. You're limited. If you got something like a Parker funnel web, then you're going to build a Gangster, I guess, because that's what it needs to be. And then I got guys who say, well, I have this intake. What can I do with it? You know, can I put this on? Can I do this? And it's like, yeah, if you want to spend a lot of money and build a motor, sure. You can use that intake, I guess. You know, I don't know what you want me to tell you. Because, like, if I tell you it's too big, some guys don't like hearing that. Oh, well, how much would it really hurt it? A lot. It'll take the fun out of the car, for sure, going from this to that. Because it did for me. The drivability sucked with that Parker funnel web before, and with this weigh-in, I could take it down to 500 RPM in 4th gear. Yeah, I got 430s on 28-inch tires. Do the math. 500 RPM with an Anderson N51 camshaft. Those camshafts are pretty choppy, and the car goes. It wouldn't buck. It wouldn't do none of that. I could almost push the thing to the floor, and I'd just take off, drive right up, because of the intake manifold. That's what it is. Because this intake gave me the torque I needed. This intake makes good torque. Like I was saying earlier, this intake on something, it might lose power compared to the ideal intake on something that has a 600 lift cam with compression behind it and good heads, but I almost guarantee you this will make more torque. Because it's shown me that it has. I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head. My buddy thought we made 350 wheel foot-pounds. And I said, nah, I don't think it was that much. But he might have been right, the more I think about it, because I think it was something, it was like jaw drop. I was like, how the heck did it make that much torque? But don't hold me to that, because I'm not 100% sure. That's what he thought it made. And he usually remembers the numbers on stuff like that, especially when he's impressed. And it was something we both kind of were shocked at when we saw the number. With this intake, I made, I think it was under 320 foot-pounds with the Parker. The Parker, I think, was like 300 or something like that. Real low on the how much torque it made. It made 320 wheel, I think, with this intake, that Parker intake. The weigh-in, I think it made the same power, but I think it made way more torque for sure. So that about wraps up that segment of this video, or part of this video. Now let's go see what we got going on over here. Sorry for the close-up of my 3 chin hairs. Eyes around. Get this box out of the way. So a friend of mine came over. We got the fuel system. I don't know if I put this in the last video or not. We got the fuel system routed though. He gave me a hand, and I really just wanted him to come over to hang out. But he wanted to work on this with me, so I thought that was really cool and nice of him, because this guy, Matt from R&M Automotive, he's always busy. So for him to come over here and give me a hand with this, hang out, it was a really nice time. I enjoyed it. It makes you remember, when you don't have that for a while, it makes you remember why we do this. So that was awesome. And I thank him. So if he watches this, thank you. But we got the return here. This kind of goes down underneath into the trans tunnel. And then this is my feed coming up. It's wide. It goes into these 2 fuel lines up here through the middle of the intake. Which I like for cleanliness. I don't like because heat is going to get absorbed into those lines and it might get brittle through time. But that's how it's routed, and that's how I'm leaving it, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Nah, but it's just for cleanliness, and I'll keep an eye on it, make sure that, I don't get no fuel leaks. But everything for the exhaust, obviously, I have this. That could be a big problem because the header tube's right here. But, and these fittings here, if they were to leak, it's going to drip down. Hopefully it don't spray out if I did have a problem, but it should be okay. It's not directly over the exhaust, and that's, But anytime fuel's by exhaust, it's bad, but it's really the inevitable. There's no real way to... The only thing I could really do with this is extend these even further out, or extend this more this way. And I'm making it more of a bigger deal than what it probably really is. I didn't even think that I could shine light on it. But it's pretty far away. I mean, that's probably about 5-inch distance, if I had to guess. And then it runs down the side of the car. I still got to tie the lines up. We got the fuel cell mounted. It's all bolted in and screwed in. Fuel pump's mounted. All this stuff is mocked up. It's all got to be taken back apart, put back on. But all fittings, no line. So it's 90-degree fitting out of the sump into the filter, first filter, into the pump. This has to get changed to 10. This fitting here, this fitting here, and these 3 or 4 have to get changed to 10 AN. And then these 4 need to get changed to 10 AN. And then it runs into that filter there. And down the car. So I still got to tie everything up. I got to wire the pump up still. The car needs to be wired still. So that's probably next. I'll probably finish the fuel system up, get that all hung up. And at first I gotta get this customer's car done now, so it might be a while for me. I wanted this running by my birthday, which is in a couple weeks, but most likely I'm not going to have the time to do what I need to do to get this done. Probably this month, honestly. So that's I wanted to hear this car, which is, but I need too much done. The intake still needs to be gone through. I got to pull that off, give that to my dad. I got to get wires. I got to make mounts for things. I got to weld things. There's a lot still needs to be done. Wire the car up. I got to make mounts for the crank trigger. There's a lot. There's still a lot. So, will it be done this year? I believe so. I don't see why not. But probably not in the time I wanted it. So, realistically, it'll probably be done the worst time of the season, which is probably summer. That's what I'm kind of thinking. Which I guess that's better than getting it done next year, but like I like coming out when it's cool a little bit so I can see what the car is capable of doing and have the thing actually run good. Is what it is though. So I'm behind on it. Like I said, we got a cat that was dumped. We think she was dumped, and that's been my main priority. That's more important than getting a car done. So getting her used to the house. But that's not all we got for this. Also got this cute little guy. Ordered this brand new. Look how cute that is. Hard to believe that we pay as much money for things that are the size of your hand. Look at this thing. It's like the size of my head. Tiny little thing. That's going to replace my distributor. It's going to be my crank or cam sensor, I should say. Cam sync. But yeah, that's all there really is to that. Not much more for me to tell you. It was $340 or whatever. Free shipping from MSD or Holly. So that's got to get put in, wired as well. I did also I forgot about this, Power Master starter in it. There you go. Kind of see that pretty sticker. So now it's got a Power Master mini starter instead of a stock one. Little stuff like that. That's just something I had here. Came out of my girl's car that we just got rid of. And figure I'd put it in this since I have it. So this is something I wanted to do. Almost dropped you guys. Something I wanted to do that just to make it nicer for me. Starter was brand new, hardly used, so why not? And it's easy to replace. 2 bolts, a couple wires, nothing crazy. So a friend of mine has my trailer and my battery, and I didn't realize that till I was working on this with my buddy Matt 2 weeks ago, and I can't try to crank it over because I don't have a battery here that's charged up. So I gotta wait till I get my battery back. Maybe this weekend I'll go grab it. See if we can at least get the car to crank over. If the car cranks over, then that'll be a lot of that'll feed me ambition. So sometimes you just look at these cars and you look at them and then it makes you not want to look at them because it's like, man, I really need more than what I thought I did, or need a lot. But it'll get done. So if you feel that way, you're not the only one that feels that way. That's pretty much it, guys. Just got to tie everything up, get that cam sync in, which will be after the intake's gone through. And getting tired of holding this phone. And, you know, hopefully after the intake's done, cam sinks in, wire the car up, and hopefully it'll run. And after it runs, and it'll be cleaning everything up and getting stuff dialed in and tuned, hopefully. So I'll probably throw it on pump gas to get it to run and for the first time and make sure there's no leaks and all that, and then start buying the expensive stuff so it can drink that. Hopefully make some decent power and hopefully go after this record and accomplish it. So, that being said, I'm going to let you guys go. Till next time, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys later.